Welcome back to another Family History Friday with the Butler Area Public Library. This week we are going to just look at Ancestry.com and the Heritage Quest Image Viewer and all of the tools that are built in that are going to help you make the most of the records that you're finding. So this is going to be all about just understanding how to interact with records on Ancestry in that image viewer mode. So let's get started. Let's start here on the search page where we see some results for some basic info I put in for a man named Peter Kennedy. He was born around 1826 and lived in Butler County, Pennsylvania. Now we have a number of records here that Ancestry thinks are matches or approximate matches for the information I put in. Let's just start by clicking this very first one, this 1870 United States Federal Census record. When we do that, we come to a separate page just for that record. It shows us a bit of transcribed information about the person in that record itself. So we can see the name Peter Kennedy, his age, his approximate birth year, the dwelling number, which is the just house in order that census enumerator visited, the nearest post office, value of his personal and real estate, and then the names of the other persons in the household. When we scroll back up to the top, then on the left-hand side here, we have the thumbnail, and that takes us into Ancestry's image viewer. That's where we're seeing the record itself. So here we are. And this is the image of the actual 1870 census record that previous screen was a transcription of. Now, when we are in Ancestry's image viewer here, we have a number of buttons and menus that are available to help you get the most out of this record to make sure you're understanding the information in it and contextualizing the information in it. So to get started, we are going to look at the set of buttons over here on the right-hand side. You can see that there's a few buttons here. This top one that looks like some little picture frame brackets, clicking that takes you into full screen mode. So if you need to see more of this record, this is the one that we're going to click. So we can see here once you've clicked the full screen button, the image is enlarged. It fills up the entire screen of my computer here. We don't have the menu and top section that shows the website address from my internet browser. We also don't have the computer menus at the bottom. It just gives me a wider view to look at this record, take in the names of the neighbors and things like that. At the bottom of this set of buttons is your zoom control. So this is going to allow you to enlarge or shrink the document that you're looking at. You can either click the buttons here, plus or minus to zoom in and out, or you can grab the little bar in the center here and drag so you can see we can zoom way, way, way in on this record, or zoom way out and look at the full page. We also have the ability to turn the page digitally in these records on Ancestry. So when we look at the actual lines for Peter Kennedy and his family on this census record, you'll see that Peter is here on line 38 and his wife Rachel and daughter Mary. But there were more people in this household when we were looking at the index page. So where are they? That's where we want to look at the left and right buttons. You can see over here, there's one on the left-hand side, and over here, a little arrow on the right-hand side. Those let us turn the page, quote unquote, to the next image or the previous image in this series. So let's go ahead and click the right button. And you'll see that it's loaded a new image for us. And if we scroll up to the top, and let that finish loading, we can see James, Joseph, Thomas, and Susanna, who are the remaining children in the Kennedy household. So this family was actually split onto two pages just in the way that this record was recorded. So if we didn't turn that page, we actually wouldn't be able to look at the names of everybody in this household. And if we actually notice, the next house that's enumerated is another Kennedy family. So seeing this now, I know, okay, maybe the neighboring Kennedy here, James Kennedy, is he a relative? He's older, so maybe he's a parent, an uncle, something like that. So that's something for me to investigate further. Ancestry also has a tool menu. That is the third icon here that looks like a little hammer and wrench. And when we click that, there's a full menu that opens when we click on that one. And you can see that there are some pretty self-explanatory options in here. If you want to quickly print a copy of this record, you would hit print. If you also want to quickly download a JPEG image copy of it, you can hit download. But the rest of these have to do with the way that we are viewing the image on the website itself. So we can rotate. So for example, if I wanted to rotate this document to the left, now we can see it is sideways. This might be helpful if you have a document with some information written in the margin. That way you don't have to turn your neck to view it. You can just turn the image itself. Let's rotate right and get that oriented back up right here. You can also, in the tool menu, flip the document. So if I click flip horizontally, that is actually going to bring up now sort of a backwards horizontal copy of this document. Maybe you're looking at something that has some ink written in the back and there's bleed through and you're trying to get a feel for that. Then maybe you might want to flip this image. Let's flip that back. You also have the option in here to invert colors. So if we click invert colors, you can see that it takes this positive image and turns it into a negative. If you're having trouble deciphering some handwriting, maybe something is a little faded, inverting the colors on this document might help you pick out some of the writing a little bit better. You can see that it brings it sort of into high contrast, negative, white on black. So if you're struggling reading a record, maybe try inverting the colors. Similarly, if you come across an image in a set of records here that is a negative, you can simply hit invert colors and bring it into positive. The last set of things that are in that tool menu are less for manipulating the image itself and more for helping you get information out of the document. So when we go to settings, you can see there's a number of items that you can toggle on and off. So the first one, highlight households. When I have this on, you can see here Peter Kennedy's house is highlighted. Peter himself is in yellow because he is the main person that I am looking at the info for, and the rest of the people in the house are in pale green. That's helpful if you're looking at a page that's loaded with people and maybe the handwriting is a little difficult to read. It just helps draw the eye immediately to the people you're looking for. The second thing in there are these text tips. And when I have that on, you can see when I hold my mouse over any box on this page, it brings up a little bubble that highlights the information. So again, this is going to be helpful if you are struggling to read the document itself. We can see here if I hold my mouse pointer over Peter Kennedy, a little bubble pops up and shows me that this box is the name and it's Peter Kennedy. I move over here, the age is 44, gender male, race white, occupation farmer, real estate value $6,000, etc., etc. When we're looking at these little hash marks for the neighbors, we can see that this one means that his father is of foreign birth. So the little text tips can be really helpful if you are either struggling to read the document or in the case of this Peter Kennedy family, where they're way down here at the bottom of the page, so I don't have the actual column headings visible at the same time that I'm looking at them. Another option that you have here are the name labels and column labels. When these are turned on, if the labels themselves, so you can see here for the column labels at the top, these are the pre-typed, pre-printed headings for each of these questions asked on the document. If I start to scroll down the page, if I click and pull this document away, as soon as those column headings disappear from view, when I have that option turned on, Ancestry drops in these little overlays, and you can see here now it tells me name, age, sex, race, occupation, birthplace, things like that. So we just get a nice little menu overlay of the columns themselves that stays with us no matter what part of the page we are looking at. So those are the main things under the settings that you'll want to work with. There is one other button on screen that's going to help you interpret the writing and the documentation that's in the record you're looking at. That is down here at the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side of this little bar. It looks like silhouettes of two people. If you click on that, that opens up the index for the whole page. So remember on the previous screen, we see the indexed record information just for whichever one individual we are name searching for. This lets you scroll through the indexing for the entire record. So this will just kind of let you really quickly take a look at the other names that are on the pages, the other occupations, birth years, birthplaces, anything that's kind of giving you a little bit of trouble. You can open this record up and take a look at it, and it will help you interpret that writing a little bit more. You can make this bigger. If you grab the three little lines in the center, you can see my mouse cursor turns into a double arrow. I can pull that up a little bit further over top of the image itself, or I can shrink that down to really just sort of one row of text high. But that is where you see the image for the entire record. This could also be really helpful if you're looking at passenger lists, other kinds of documents where they cram a lot of information on there, like these census records, and sometimes you might be struggling a little bit with looking at the writing. The last button that I want to highlight in this particular video is back on our right-hand side, and it is to open the sidebar menu. To do that, you want to click this second button from the top that looks like an arrow pointing left. And when I do that, you can see it opens this panel on the side. And there's a couple of things that are going on here in this side panel. The default one is detail mode. So we can see here that detail is darkened. And this is just, again, the transcription of the information for Peter Kennedy, the person that we were originally searching for, as is transcribed off of the page. So rather than have to go back a page to double check that, so going back to this landing page, when you're in the document viewer itself, you can just look at this side panel and quickly look back at the information. What else is helpful is you can see the names of the other people in the household are here as at the bottom as clickable links. If I were to click on his wife Rachel's name, now I'm viewing this record for Rachel, and I see Rachel's transcribed information here instead of Peter. Let's click back over onto Peter. Two other buttons in this panel we have here. The next one is called Related. If I click on that, these are records that are suggested by Ancestry's algorithms that they think are the same Peter Kennedy. The way that these get put together, partially it is based on the information in the record itself. So if we have someone with the same name, the same age, the same geographic location of residence, things like that, they will come up as suggested records. The other thing that factors into it are Ancestry's users who are generating public trees in the paid subscription mode. If people are regularly attaching records to a person in their family tree, Ancestry is analyzing the way that those records are being saved together to a particular person and using that to suggest records to you as a researcher. So we can see here there are a couple of suggested records and a clickable here, we can view all 19 suggested records. We have some other census records, a link out to find a grave, some death certificates, Social Security applications, things like that. Now you can see that we have a ton of death certificates here. Probably what's happening is one of these could potentially be Peter Kennedy himself, but the rest are likely the death records of his children because parents' names are indexed as a searchable field on the Pennsylvania death records. Similarly, I would bet that this Social Security Applications and Claims Index is not our Peter Kennedy here, who was born in 1826, simply because there's really no feasible way he could have lived long enough to be eligible for Social Security in the mid to late 20th century. But as you can see here, they are at least suggesting records that fit the name, fit the location. All of these suggested records are clickable, so we can click on any of these and immediately load that next record. So let's click on the 1880 census. And we can see here we go back to that landing page. So it's Peter Kennedy, born around 1826 in Butler County, has a wife named Rachel and a number of children. So we know from comparing previous research and the 1870 record we were looking at that this is the same person, so this is a good match. And that's just going to save you some time rather than you have to keep going back to your main page of search records. You can look at this sort of more targeted list of suggested match records for Peter Kennedy and speed up your research. If we look at another one of these suggested records here, perhaps one of these death records, if we click on this, you can see here that this is a Pennsylvania death certificate. Peter Kennedy is named in it, but there's not a lot of information because the record is actually for this Adelia B. Fox. But you can see here that Peter's spouse named on the record is Rachel Cooper. If we click on this record itself and take a look, so it's a death record for Adelia Fox, whose maiden name was Kennedy. Her father's Peter Kennedy. Her mother's Rachel Cooper. It's possible she was born in the 1870s. It's possible that this is a daughter of Peter and Rachel, who we were looking at census records for, and so the suggested records led you to this later document from the 1940s. So they're definitely worth taking a look. They're usually, if they are good records, going to be for the person themselves or their immediate family members when they are records that the person is named on. Lastly, the button that says source here in this side panel, this just gives you the full source citation if you are wanting to really thoroughly cite your research. So you can see that this is the 1870 census for Winfield Township, Butler County. It actually gives you the specific reel of microfilm that this was digitized from. And then a citation here that Ancestry reproduced it by images that were microfilmed by Family Search. It's a National Archives microfilm publication, and it has a description of what the 1870 census itself is. So if you're having trouble understanding either where this record came from originally before it was uploaded to Ancestry or what the record itself is, click on the source and you can get a description of where it came from and what it is. If you don't want to view this side panel and you want to close it back up, you will simply close that arrow button by clicking on the icon. You can see now that this side panel is open, the arrow faces right because we're going to be pushing it back closed. To open it back up, we just click the arrow again when it's facing left, but you can get that out of the way to go back to having sort of a full screen view of just the document itself. But I hope understanding what some of these buttons are on your Ancestry record viewer screen help you make the most of your research. And thank you for joining for another weekly Family History Friday session with the Butler Area Public Library.